Welcome back to another Phase 6 BIS list. This time we're going to go over your Priest class, arguably the best healer in Classic. I'm arguing for the Shaman, but your opinion can vary, and that's fine. Anyways, you're going to use a lot of your Tier 3, just like most classes are in Phase 6. Now, it may be a while before you get to that, because you're going to be competing with other Priests and other classes for that Tier 3 stuff. And before you get your best in slot, you may want to try and maintain the Tier 2 3-piece, the mana regeneration bonus. It can still be pretty useful. We don't know exactly how difficult the fights in Naxx will be, based on the PTR and what has been happening in Classic. Since Classic's inception, I don't imagine it'll be very difficult, but I imagine it'll also be a significant step up over AQ40. So, keeping the mana regeneration bonus is worthwhile. But at the end of the day, it's a BIS list for Phase 6, and I don't think any of the Tier 2 pieces will make that. It's just something you could use as a stepping stone until you get there. What I'm going to do is list all of the Tier 3 pieces, because they're all usable in their slot. They may not be the best piece for that particular slot, but the bonuses are worth having, the stats are great, and sometimes you might not have the best in slot healing piece for that, because those are also coveted items. So your ultimate best in slot list will be a mix between Tier 3 and best in slot heal pieces. But depending on what gear you have, depends on what you're going to be using, obviously, right? And again, you might still want to be using the Tier 2 3-piece bonus for a while, as long as you can anyway. Depending on what you have access to, of course. We'll go ahead and get started. Helmet, as said before, Circlet of Faith is arguably best in slot. Pretty much that's going to be the case for every slot here. The armor in Tier 3 is all good. Its stats are blown up for every class. Blizzard's like, hey, we know how to make pieces now. So, it's kind of boring to go through all of the 8 major slots, but hey, we'll do it anyway, because, it's a gear BIS list, and, a lot of people want to farm out their BIS for Classic. A lot of people want to get their best in slot in Naxx and get ready for TBC. A lot of people just want to feel like they conquered Classic, so, that's what we're going to do. Circle of Faith, very good piece. It's got good bonuses, good stats, all that good stuff. Don Rigoberto's is your other option, and not to mention the World Boss hats. They're all on par with Don Rigoberto's, but Don Rigoberto's is probably what's going to be available for most people. So head slot best in Classic is Circle of Faith or Don Rigoberto's, depending on what you have access to. Shoulders, shoulder pads of Faith, probably quite a bit better than the other option, but that, I guess, your mileage may vary. Shoulder pads of Faith or Ternary Mantle. This is a good slot to keep your Tier 2 3-piece bonus if you're still trying to get that. Chest, Robes of Faith. Again, it's a good piece. Options other than that are Robes of the Guardian Saint and your Tier 2 piece, of course, if you're still doing that. Wrists, Bracelets of Royal Redemption are actually arguably best in slot here. Now, your Tier 3, of course, is going to be mentioned here, but Bracelets of Royal Redemption is probably your best bet for an actual BIS list. Legs, Leggings of Faith, of course. If you don't have those, you can go with the Empowered Leggings or Tier 2. Really, Leggings of Faith is just the best piece here. Hands, Gloves of Faith. Nice slot to keep your Tier 2 bonus in if you're still doing that, until you get Gloves of Faith, of course. Waist, Grasp of the Old God is probably your best piece. And, of course, Belt of Faith, optional. You heard it before. Feet, Sandals of Faith, probably edges out Boots of Pure Thought here. Probably for actual BIS list, that's what I would go with. Either way, you're going to be fine. Again, Tier 2 pieces are still options here. So for your 8 main slots, what I would say would be the best are, well, I guess it depends, again, on what you're having access to. But in my opinion, best in slot, Helmet, Circle of Faith, Shoulders, Shoulder Pads of Faith, Chest, Robe of Faith, Wrists, ready for the curveball, Bracelets of Royal Redemption, Legs, Leggings of Faith, Hands, Gloves of Faith, Waist, curveball again, Grasp of the Old Gods, and Feet, Sandals of Faith. Now, more interesting to talk about the necklace slot. You have a couple options here that are really good, and a couple options that are defensible but not as good. Amulet of the Fallen God, in my opinion, is still the best neck piece. Necklace of Necropsy is also another option. They're both pretty much on par. Amulet, I think, is better. But either way, you're not going to complain either piece, right? And if below those, if you don't have access to those for whatever reason, Amulet of the Shifting Sands is super easy to get, and Jindo's Evil Eye is still defensible to be using until you get a piece of the other pieces. Either way, those 4 slots, they're close enough on par that any of those pieces are defensible to go into Naxx with. Obviously, the first 2 mentioned are better than the other 2, but whatever. Back. I know you're sick of looking at Height of the Wild. I am too. It's also still usable. Height of the Wild and Shroud of Pure Thought are both decent pieces to go into with Naxx. Now, you don't want to be there. Cloak of Suturing is your best in slot piece, in my opinion. And failing that, Cloak of Clarity is better than the other 2 options. So Cloak of Suturing or Cloak of Clarity is your best in slot here for Classic. The other 2 pieces, much like the neck, they're defensible options to be using right now, but they're not best in slot. And now, we're to the rings. You got a few options here. Some are better than others, of course, similar to the amulets. Ring of Faith and Band of Unanswered Prayers are your best in slot rings. Might have a lot of trouble getting those. Hopefully you do. That's all there is to say about that, right? Failing that, you got a couple other options. Ring of the Martyr, still good. Pure Elementium Band, still good. Those are your 4 pieces that are defensible to be using at this stage in Classic. I mean, of course, you're going to be using other pieces, but I'm trying to be a high and mighty YouTuber here, so I'm going to say that Ring of Faith and Band of Unanswered Prayers are your best in slot. Failing that, you got Ring of the Martyr and Pure Elementium Band. Now, if you're like me, you could still be using Cauterizing Band and Four Rings Dream Quest stuff, but I'm going to act like I'm not. But let's be real. A lot of you are still going to be using not as great rings because the ring slot is hard to fill in. Everybody's wanting the pieces here, and the other ones just aren't not quite as good. It's not like the Height of the Wild. Height of the Wild's still arguably great, right? But Cauterizing Band's not quite as good in this time period, right? That's the word I'm looking for. We're going to move on because I'm just using a lot of words here that are just rambling. Okay, trinkets. You got a new big boy on the farm here. Eye of the Dead. Everybody's going to want this. Best piece of trinket in Classic. Rejuvenating Gem, still best in slot in my opinion. So Eye of the Dead, Rejuvenating Gem is your trinket combo, best Classic. Good luck getting these. Good luck to any healer who has this combination. You are a god among men. And other pieces that you could use until you get these, or forever, because you may never get them. Warmth of Forgiveness is another piece to pick up in Naxx that is actually surprisingly pretty good with the unused piece. It's not just a shard of the scale. The math, I think somebody said it adds up to like 26 MP5 while it's active. You want to pick it up. It's good. Long fights, roll with it. Other than that, you could still be using some plus heal trinkets that aren't quite as good as the other ones. Like your Dire Maul trinket's still a thing that you could be using. Of course, the ZG trinket, that's pretty good. You probably should be using it until you get one of those piston slot pieces. Hopefully you at least have a Rejuve Gem plus the ZG trinket. That's probably what you want to be going into Naxx with. But if you don't, hey, you can still use other pieces. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal, but we're going to act like it's not. Main hands, Hammer of the Twisting Nether, best piece in Classic for healing. You know that. Everybody knows that. It's what you're going in. It's going to be the top of your loot list priority going into Naxx, I'm sure. Failing that, Scepter of the False Prophet, of course, that's an option. It's not as good as the Hammer of Twisting Nether, but of course you wouldn't expect it to be, right? Those are your best pieces. You could be using Benediction, but let's hope you're not. Depending on how your guild prioritizes Scepter of the False Prophets, you might still be using it. There are other options, but they're just not on quite as on par as these 2 pieces. Maybe eventually, if you keep raiding all through Classic, you'll get one or the other, and that's where you want to be. Offhand, Sapphiron's Right Eye takes the place of the best offhand piece nowadays. Might have some hard competition to get that. You could still be using Leave the Life Giver. It's not great, but it's easy to get if you're doing a PvP thing. I don't. Sartura's Might is still good, and the Noth offhand is still pretty good too. Noth offhand is probably second best to Sapphiron's Right Eye, but the other 3 options just aren't on par with Sapphiron's Right Eye. Sartura's Might, Noth, and then Leave the Life Giver are kind of, all second fiddle to Sapphiron's Right Eye. And good news here, in your 1 slot, you can actually use a good epic ring. By epic ring, I mean epic wand. Wand of the Whispering Dead. You could quit using your greens now. Now you can be full epic priest. Anyways, there's that. We'll see you next time in TBC.